My name is Jay Oza. I coach people win with their speeches. And I hope you're getting some good information from the videos that I'm recording. And if you ever need help with your speech, let me know. I want to talk about something called cold speaking, which is something that I picked up from something else called cold calling. Now, most of us probably know what cold calling is. Typically, when you get a call from somebody that's trying to sell you something, typically a telemarketer, that's a cold call. But we always look down upon people who cold call. In my opinion, cold calling is the most important skill because you have to start somewhere. And whether it's a sales job or a non-sales job, you got to have the skill to cold call people. And you can't cold call people inside the company or outside the company, you can't succeed. People don't come to you. You got to get to the people. So anyway, that's cold calling. That commonly applies to sales, typically. But there is a concept that I've come up with called cold speaking. Now, what this means is that you have a speech that you're working on, but you really don't know whether it's going to resonate with people or not. Now, if you ask people to give you a feedback on a speech that you're recording, most likely the feedback isn't going to be that helpful if you get any. So the thing to do is, when you talk to people, you just cold speak your speech. And that could be as simple as hey, I'm working on this speech. Let me know what you think of this. And I do this. And you just tell them that, for example, I'm currently working on my book. I met this guy who had a dog with him at the park, and we started talking, and suddenly, at some point, I steered the conversation towards my book so that I can do a cold speak. And I said, currently I'm working on my book, and naturally he expressed some interest. And I'll tell him, I said, let me just kind of tell you what the book's the way it's organized. So I wanted to kind of talk about the structure of the book. And I said, the first part kind of looks at the overview of speaking, the second part, the development of public speaking skills, the third part is delivering a speech, fourth part is becoming a lifetime speaker. And I said, it's fairly comprehensive. Probably it's not for everybody, because most people that I know of don't like to put in the practice that's required to become a good to great speaker. And what it did was it allowed me to do my speech to somebody that had no knowledge of my speech. Now you got to be careful. You can't just go to everybody and say, hey, can I give you my speech? It has to kind of flow in a way so that it comes across naturally. But sometimes you do have to be aggressive because people are not going to ask you, okay? And that's why I call it cold speaking, because it's cold. If it's warm, then they'll come to you and say, hey, by the way, I know you're working on your book. Can you give me an idea? That's not going to happen. So cold speaking is when you have a speech that you're working on. You want to get some initial feedback to get an idea whether you're able to communicate clearly, whether you're resonating. And this is something where you can't really give a real formal speech. This is a quick way to find out what you need to learn about your speech. And from that, you can make tweaks. There's no point in giving a speech when you haven't gotten any kind of indication whether the people that you're giving the speech to using the cold speaking technique is going to even work. So, here are the steps. When you're working on a speech, test it out as often as possible. I call that cold speaking. You got an idea, let's say you did one recording like I'm doing right now. I will then go and cold speak this speech with some people and saying, one of the best way to test your speech out is bring it up with somebody, saying, hey, let me tell you in 1 minute or 2 minutes what my speech is all about, and see what kind of feedback you get. See if they have any questions. Those are type of questions you want to be able to answer when you give a speech. So a speech is like a dynamic thing. It's not something static, you do it and you're done. You got to keep on tweaking it, testing it. It's sort of like the lean approach, right? You build it, test it. You build it, you test it. You build it like a spiral methodology. I'm taking that from the software field. But incrementally, you will get to the final product. The final product is when you actually have to do it at a particular date. Until then, you're constantly tweaking it till it's ready to be delivered. So think about this concept called cold speaking. Maybe you're doing it, maybe you're calling it something else, but I think a speech has to be viewed that way. That when you're working on it, talk to people, get them excited. If you can't get them excited, like most likely you're not going to get the audience excited. Okay? Let me know what you think, and thank you for watching.